Hey everyone, welcome to our next video. So today we're going to talk about life designer tools or prototyping. And in this case, what we're talking about is finding experts. And experts are people who have a lot of knowledge, but they should also be people who share your same mindset and are willing and able to help you on your journey. This can be a little bit daunting to meet new people. So one of the things that you might want to do is watch this video. I'm going to go ahead and pause it. I think it's going to try to play. Good. But I want you to watch this because one of the things that we have is this dilemma about what is it we should do. What am I going to be the master of? What am I going to know? And what I have found is talking to people in all stages of their career, we have this dilemma. So definitely watch this. I'm going to upload this. I'm going to upload the link just so you can watch it on Canvas. So a big question we have is getting unstuck. I was reading through a lot of our homework and the work that you guys have turned in on Canvas, and this idea of getting unstuck seems to be coming back over and over again, which is, what am I supposed to do next? I think that's a pretty natural feeling right now after a pandemic or during a pandemic. But we want to start looking at how do we move forward, because stuck is not a fun place to be. And stuck can be because we don't have choices, but it can also be because there's too many choices or too many big choices where everything feels just so important to us. So let's talk about this. So finding work that fits your purpose. That's really our goal here, is to understand what purposeful means to us and to start finding work that's going to align with it. Remember, we don't have to love our job. Our job is not fun time. We don't have to have a dream job. In fact, most people, it's better that the dream job stays a dream. I wanted to be an artist. I was lucky enough to spend 6 years as a professional photographer. I loved it, and yet, you know what? When I walked away from it, I remember feeling relief, having it back to be mine, for my own benefit and not to make a living from it. So some of the things that I want you to think about here are be open and expanding your possibilities. I don't regret that time as a photographer, but I wonder what else I could have done. So expand your possibilities. Think about all the other things you might have done. Okay? And I want you to start combating overwhelm, which this sounds like a crazy, combination here. But as you expand your possibilities, I want you to start looking for patterns in what catches your eye and what you find interesting. I want you to start looking for the community that you want to join. Who are your people? Who do you want to be with? For me, that was the thing that drove me out of the arts. They didn't feel like my community, and it didn't feel like my people. Maybe that would have been different if design had been an option, but at the time, graphic design wasn't an option. And the fine arts group, as fascinating as they were, and as much as I wanted to be a part of them, it didn't interest me. That debate about which color blue at 2 a.m., I think, or 3 a.m., it wasn't right for me. And if I'd known that earlier, if I'd looked for the patterns, I could have moved myself closer to the communities that do interest you, interest me. And in this case, I was lucky enough to find education, adult education, and learning when I was in college. But what if I hadn't? It's a big thought. Right? So let's talk about finding experts. Right? So selecting a career and a community to explore is a personal thing. You have to look around and decide, what is it I want to hear about? One way I do this is, what would I talk about if I didn't have the weather to talk about, if I didn't have coffee to talk about, if I didn't have, if we're on campus, the buses to talk about? What are the things I would want to talk about? I need to know where my experts hang out. Where are these people? Okay? And that can seem a little daunting when we don't go anywhere, but you know what? They're all here on the internet with us. I want you to start thinking about your elevator pitch, that 30-second introduction to yourself. Imagine we met in a building and I said, "You look familiar. Who are you?" How do you introduce yourself in 30 seconds, and how do you do a pitch that convinces me that you should be part of my world. Okay? So we want to start planning that elevator pitch because you never know when you're going to need it. And finally, I want you to start thinking about the effects that race and gender and identity have on networking. Does it make you more or less comfortable? Are you comfortable in more or in some situations but not others? We can't ignore the fact that race and gender and other aspects of our identities do affect not just our careers, but how we approach people and how they respond to us. So we want to be mindful of this. So finding your purpose, I think that's probably the closest to happiness most people ever get. Right, is purpose, and there's lots of literature on this. In fact, some people claim happiness doesn't exist. Purpose does. We should work for purpose, and in doing so, happiness will find us, okay, or we'll find whatever this thing of happiness is, which is a whole different class that we could do someday. Okay, but so purpose is going to emerge when you take action and you make choices that align with your core values. If one of your core values is helping others, but you take a job because it's going to make you a lot of money, you're probably not going to feel a lot of purpose in that. You will initially, maybe, but eventually it's going to become uncomfortable. It's like wearing shoes that aren't meant for you. Okay. What I've also found though is that if you're taking action and make choices that do work with your core values, for instance, if I am constantly making my decisions based on the 3 values that I picked, my core. Your core values, by the way, there's more than 3, but 3 is a good place to start. Can't tackle everything in 1 week. What I've found is that things start to fit better. A good example is I remember Livingston campus. I'd never been there before. I was there and it felt so weird, and I remember thinking, this is not home. College Ave felt more comfortable to me. But once I started walking around and meeting people and getting involved, what I started to realize is that, that sense of purpose and fit grew in me, to the fact that, the last day before that night we closed the campus for the pandemic, I remember I felt like I was walking away from my academic home. So sometimes this takes time. It takes time to find that and to feel it and to own it. Right? Sometimes it takes time for those new shoes to break in. So just another thing to think about. So where do we even start exploring? Okay, so we have groups of majors that you could start looking at, or you could look at career communities that fit for you. And I'm going to post this so that you can actually click on these links, because I think that they're going to be useful for you. But you want to start exploring, and you want to start thinking. Another way that you might focus yourself is to say, what are the biggest problems we're facing? Now, we have some big problems. I am not going to argue that. But where do you see yourself being able to make a difference? Where do your specific talents and skills and knowledge and values fit into the world's problems? Because every one of us can contribute meaningfully, and that gives us purpose. And so I want you to start thinking about that. Okay. Remember this diagram? We talked about who's in your network. Well, obviously your friends and family. Hopefully you have classmates and coworkers, your professors or your bosses. But we want to start looking at how do we expand this. And this can be a little nerve-wracking. Okay? So social capital is this idea of connections that we use and that we can benefit from, but we can also help others with. So not all social capital is created equal. Not everybody has the same social capital. So these are things that I want you to start working through, is that, even loose connections online through LinkedIn can be a little helpful. I remember responding to somebody once on LinkedIn, congratulating them on something, and they responded back to me. And we have spoken periodically. Another person that I had, responded to in a post actually responded back to me and asked me if I was interested in being on his podcast. That hasn't happened yet. But you never know. Even these loose connections can be really helpful, or a little helpful at least. But if you can, what you want to do is get a sponsor. So a sponsor is a person who has a position of power, who knows you well, and wants to or can recommend or give you a promotion. So I had a sponsor early in my career. He was my boss at the time. After I left, he continued to help me and work with me. And in fact, I reconnected with him this year, and he was willing to introduce me to people. So you want to start looking for these people that you start a loose connection with and that might actually click with you. And that's hard. Okay? So I want you to start thinking about who's in your network and who should be. Who would you feel like asking a recommendation for? And you might want to talk to friends or family to see who they know and would recommend become a part of your network. Okay? And who do you want to have a deeper relationship with? I mean, this is a strange way to think if you're just sitting here going, but I'm a student. I don't know how to do this. No, that you don't. And that's okay because everybody is learning. And purposeful connection is really, really necessary now that so much of our work is online. So a lot of people think networking is really scary, but networking is actually quite a lot of fun. It's like meeting people for coffee and making new friends out of it. It's scary to put yourself out there, but it works. Okay? So some places you can find people are through virtual events that we have on campus. Okay? You can also use LinkedIn. Okay? And you can use career services. We have the Student Alumni Career Connections. And they're great because they're going to help you build these relationships. And you never know where they're going to take you. But you'll find the people that you fit with. Okay? You want to start with informational networking. So you don't go to somebody and say, can I have a job? You just start getting to know them. I mean, in fact, I had reached out to somebody at Rutgers and, it led me one place, then another, and suddenly I'm teaching this course. You don't know where this is going to go, but it started because I really wanted to know more about what we had for career services because I was teaching business writing and my students needed support. So networking isn't about asking for jobs, okay? It's about learning and sharing with other people. So how do we get started? We're going to be doing this, so pay attention here. You've got to introduce yourself with energy. You have to give your elevator pitch that you're still looking, okay? And you're going to be practicing this, okay? Things you're going to need to do in this is you're going to want to do your elevator pitch and you're going to want to practice it. So I'm leaving these in the presentation just so you know what to do because I'm going to ask you to find somebody you know in your own life and practice it. When you're done, I'm going to want you to think through or ask your partner to answer some questions for you. You're not turning this into me. I want them to give you some information. If you need help finding a partner, email me because I'm going to bet you at least half of our class would love to do this with someone in our class. Maybe meet me, during office hours and we can get you connected. Okay? You're going to start doing these informational interviews where you're going to decide what you want to know and how you're going to pick people and what you want to ask them. You're going to think about the fact that most people right now are lonely and want more connection. Okay? Especially now. It feels good to give back. Okay? And you're going to start coming up with your sample questions. Like, how did you choose a major? How did you choose your career? How did you get your first job? What's it like to work in finance? What's it like to work in the medical field right now especially? What advice do you have for me as a student? These are great places to start, but I want you to take them further and come up with your own. So this week, I want you to start thinking in this direction of how are you going to meet new people? How are you going to connect to them? And how are you going to learn from them? Because the goal is not to ask for a job, though, of course. We are looking forward and want one of those. But it's more of how do I learn, right? And where do I fit in this community? All right, I'll see you back in class.